So let's start. Let's start this panel. So hello everyone. I'm Luca Clementi, chief editor of Atikvah, the newspaper of young Jews, of Italian young Jews. And the panel is The Future of Jewish Journalism, a panel by our editorial board and staff at the UGEI Congress. So before I start and we start talking about our Atikvah 2020, our vice president, David Fiorentini, wants to say something. Come on.
So, hi everyone. It's great to see you here. It's great to be here in the UGEI Congress. And for you who saw me already yesterday in the other panel with the German Union, so I'm David, I'm the vice president of UGEI. And first of all, I wanted to thank again the UGEI for giving us yesterday the award for interfaith dialogue. And it's a thing that we will probably mention throughout this panel, since we worked very much also in that direction. And the panel of today, we will talk mainly about our news and media outlet called HaTikvah, a newspaper open to the free exchange of ideas. And we have with us our chief editors, Luca, and Nathan. We have our director, David Zebuloni, who is actually following us from Israel. And we have Ludovica, who is our US affair editor, who's now in Rome, I believe, but usually she's in Washington, right? And she will talk about this later on.
It's a great honor and a great pleasure to be with you today and to present you our journal. My name is David Zebuloni, and I've been the director of Atikvah, which is a journal open to confrontation and ideas. Born in 1949, 1 year after the foundation of the State of Israel, Atikvah evolved through the years and became what is today one of the most important Jewish journals in Italy. We started as a paper newspaper and became an ambitious journal able to offer original and top quality content. You know, there are several Jewish journals in Italy, but no one is like Atikvah. All those journals seek to represent Jewish youth, but no one of them speaks of Jewish youth. This is what makes our journal unique and special, so precious and important. Atikvah does not only use a young language, but it also speaks of topics that are relevant to young people. From technology to innovation, from local to foreign policy, including gastronomy, music, and literature. This is how our podcast was born too, which is the first Jewish Italian podcast ever. The intention is to connect young people to their past, to project them towards the future, and create something new, just the present. Atikvah does not speak of the past and the future as if they were disconnected from the reality we live in today. Atikvah speaks, first of all, of the regards youth in this dark period of our history and donates some hope to those who lost it. We make sure that people know that our voice, the voice of young people, still matters. It can make the difference. I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart. I'm emotional while speaking of Atikvah. I'm emotional and excited because to myself and to my colleagues, this word, Atikvah, not only means hope, but home too. For a whole year, we have been discussing day after day how to improve ourselves while being dissatisfied of what we had already obtained and while aiming higher and higher. We've made efforts to think out of the box, against the tide, and beyond what others thought that we were able to achieve. This year, we showed Jewish Jewry that youth does not only represent the future, but that the same youth is also the protagonist of the present. We showed that with determination and passion, we can turn a small project into a big dream. This is why I feel the need to thank my amazing co-workers, Luca Spizzichino, Luca Clementi, and Nathan Greppi. Thanks, you guys. Thank you very much. None of this would have happened without you. This year, you have told me something that for me is very important. You told me that, the most important thing is not to have great ideas, but also having great friends to share them by your side. There is a sentence said by Rav Kook that I personally love very much and that guided me through the last year. The sentence reads, "I don't speak because I have the power to speak. I speak because I don't have the power to remain silent. Again, I don't speak because I have the power to speak. I speak because I don't have the power to remain silent. Being a journalist does not mean that you have to make your voice heard because you're able to, but because you cannot remain silent. The silence for a journalist is never a valid option. The silence for a journalist means indifference, and indifference does not only make us unprofessional, but also worse and less empathetic people. And this is something I cannot stand. Let's then, all of us, learn how to make our voice heard, and not only because we can do it, but as Cook says, because we cannot remain silent. Let's make our voice heard together and united now more than ever. Let's do this to build a better future and especially a better present. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks to our director, David Zebuloni, for his touching words, as usual, I'd like to say. And let's move to Lucas Pizzichino, who will talk about our podcast.
So we're thinking about new initiatives which our newspaper could carry out in the 6 months we will have to face. So we had many Facebook Lives. However, something was needed to give new life to the newspaper, which was doing well, but needed a further boost. And here is the idea. Start a podcast. Throughout Europe and the States, they go a lot, but the market in Italy is still immature. Just think that the average listening in Italy is about 20 minutes, as opposed to an average of about 40, 50 minutes. So, as you can imagine, it would have been a big risk. But everyone immediately liked the idea, from the director to the rest of the managing editors, right up to the board. And there was only one story to tell before about pills of Zionism, about simple topicality. But then here is Luca Clementi's stroke of genius. Let's talk about the Jews who made history. And so it all started. So me, Davide Zebuloni, Nathan Greppi, Luca Clementi have chosen all those characters who left us, who in some way can be an example to young people, who can be an example for future generations. It may seem like a niche theme, but we believe that there is nothing more universal than an example to be inspired by, managerial, spiritual, and much more. And if there is one thing that we know for sure, is that Am Israel is full of great examples. Just to name a few of them: Liliana Segre, Rab Jonathan Sachs, and so on and so forth. All in pills of about 5 minutes, minute plus, minute less. We just give those who want to listen to us the opportunity to do so at any time, even between the mini breaks that one takes during the day. Using Anchor.fm for distribution and Audacity for the editing of the various episodes, we are creating a podcast at no cost. In fact, at least for now, it was not about monetizing as podcasters usually do, but we did it simply for 3 reasons. The first one, to there ourselves. As never before, we wanted to experiment, create something new, never tried before. This had led us not only to grow humanly, but also professionally, creating new skills like storytelling and recording. And also to introduce to extraordinary men and women, not only for what they have done, but also for what they are. Simple heroes, devoid of superhuman powers, but endowed with an extraordinary humanity. And the last one, giving Atikvah the greatness and importance it deserves, given its history and what it can potentially be for the 4,000 young Jews that UGEI represents, a megaphone through which to express one's ideas. Like all the Atikvah project, this is also completely done in form of volunteering. And we are managing that to make a fair numbers of plays without even spending money. And we believe that there is still margin for improvement and at the same time growth. Even, for example, by writing in English, if there is ever a chance. And for your union, have you ever thought about creating your own? And please feel free to put in questions in the chat box. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Luca, for telling the story of the first Italian podcast in Jewish history. This is something that we are really proud of this podcast. It's a big work. So let's move now to the next page of our adventure. That is the American adventure. So the adventure of Ludovica Efrati, that is our US affairs editor.
My name is Ludovica Efrati, and I'm the U.S. Affairs Editor at Atikvah. I'm a young Italian professional currently living in Washington, D.C., but now I'm currently visiting family, so I'm in Italy, thankfully. That helps with the time zones. In Washington, D.C., I'm a strategic communications specialist, and I would like to thank everyone so much for joining our meeting today and for your support. It means the world to us. And I would like to remind everyone that the chat box is open, so if you have any questions, please feel free to keep them rolling as we're speaking. In terms of U.S. affairs, this year at Atikvah, we covered multiple topics. Thanks to our reporting during the U.S. elections, we were able to inform our community about what the two contender stances were on anti-Semitism, BDS, and Israel, and share some updates regarding what was going on in Congress in terms of COVID-19 stimulus and relief packages. We did a Facebook Live, and we had about 3,000 people reading us and tuning in for, again, the Facebook Live and the article. We wrote an article shortly after the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, also known as RBG, remembering her life as a Jew and as a Supreme Court judge. And more recently, we did another Facebook Live with a little over 2,000 views as of today, where we talked about what the new Biden administration will inherit on January 20th. And we touched upon healthcare, social justice issues, racism, and anti-Semitism. At this point, you're probably wondering why the U.S. deserves a special place in our journal. Well, the thing is that I always like to say is that everyone loves speaking about the U.S. and criticizing their policies and putting their 2 cents in. Also, we're all Jews and, 2 Jews, 4 opinions, as everyone says. But how many people really know what it's like to be a European Jew in America? It's a very special perspective. And how many young Jewish journals have the privilege of having someone on the ground? The response is not many, as you well know. This is why I volunteer as a U.S. Affairs Editor. During my life, I do other things professionally, but this is part of my volunteering. My mission is to bring out those aspects and perspectives that you might not be able to find in a mainstream journal and that you would certainly identify with as a young European Jew. I think reporting and expressing my opinions through this journal offers our readers a window through which they can look at U.S. affairs and really the broader spectrum of what U.S. affairs is. So whether it's U.S. Europe, U.S. Israel, or just U.S. government affairs, and looking at it through a lens and mentality they're familiar with. Additionally, it's always a good thing to be tuned in with what the U.S. does around the world. Some people who are following us today might not agree with what I'm about to say, but the U.S. is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, stakeholder in many issues, from international development to foreign aid to hosting refugees, Israel aid funding and defense funding. So it's really a relevant stakeholder and a relevant ally to the Jewish people and to Israel. And again, it's always good to keep up with what's happening on the other side of the ocean. It's just important, I believe. So what do I like the most about reporting? What I do like the most about our reporting at Atikvah, and more specifically about my reporting, the way I do my own thing, is that we try to be bipartisan. And I'm using the word bipartisan because using the term apolitical is just too convenient and simplistic. Ignoring the political side of things does not really get you anywhere in journalism, whereas being aware of the political forces on both sides that are involved gets you to understand what's going on and actually do some kind of reporting that is objective. And that, is worth reading at this point. And I have to say, all the pieces we write are really worth reading. And I might be, partisan and biased on this issue because I love my team and we really do some good work. But at the end of the day, they're just informative pieces with a special lens that you could really appreciate. As my colleagues have explained and are about to explain, because unfortunately I'm right in the middle of this panel, so there's the president and afterwards, our reporting is really a 360 degrees work. We do not only talk about things that your average Jewish journal talks about that are really relevant, like Shoah, memory, Israel, and anti-Semitism, which again are very relevant. but we also talk about things that go a little beyond Judaism, heritage, Jewish history, and Israel affairs. And I'm deeply thankful for the team I work with. They're all extremely qualified and knowledgeable. We have done great things since we took over Atikvah. Atikvah has, been started back in the day. And I'm confident we will keep doing a lot more. So feel free to follow us, feel free to read us, and please feel free to type in the questions in the chat box. We would love to hear from you. And also our names are, right up here. So feel free to follow us also, offline, and, tell us what you think about us and ask all the questions you want. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Ludovica, for sharing us the other important experience of Atikvah, that is the American experience. So how Atikvah wants to tell to its readers what happens in America. So let's move to Nathan Greppi.
Let's start saying that on Jewish magazines, at least in Italy, cultural articles are among the most read ones. That's also because there are many Jews who succeed in fields such as cinema, music, literature, and comics. And we wrote many articles of literary critic and movie critic reviews. Since we are not just a Jewish magazine, but also a youth magazine, we didn't just cover movies and books which are related to the Jewish world or to Israel. We focused especially on those, of course, but we covered also others which have an importance for all young people because they cover special social and political issues, or because are young adult novels. I'll give you some suggestions for whoever wants to work as a cultural journalist. If you want to be a book critic, if you want to write a review of a book, the first thing you have to do is to write an email or to contact the publisher, because usually, since you give them exposure for free, most publishers can send you a copy of the book you are interested in for free, or they send you even just a PDF. Another suggestion is that you have to talk about what you really know, because usually, since how can I say, if you want to, you can't be an expert of everything, so you have to choose 1, 2, or maximum 3 fields you are most interested in. If you want to be a film critic, you have to watch as many movies as possible, and not just on Netflix, because of course in this period, because of the pandemic, we stopped going to the cinemas, and we watched all movies on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and other platforms. But in other periods, if you want to be a film critic, you have also to go to festivals or events for passionates. If you want to be a literary critic, you have to read as many books as possible and go also to literary events or festivals. So you have to be very focused on what you want to specialize for. And if you want, you don't have to take as a model just Jewish magazines. Art reviews are published on Jewish magazines, but also read those which are published on mainstream newspapers or specialized magazines. In Atikvah, since we are a youth magazine, we give in the last 2 years a special focus to all those works where Jewish culture and geek culture are combined with each other. let's say comics, animation, and even in one or two cases we covered even video games. Another suggestion I want to give you, last but not least, is that you have to always remember that when you write an article, any kind of article, you write it for others people, not just for yourself, because sometimes I don't know how it is in your countries, but in Italy sometimes journalists used to write in an elegant and use high words, very complex language to show how well educated they are. But in this way, they just lose their audience attention. Whatever you write about, you always have to remember that you write for the others before than yourself. That's all. Thank you very much.
When you write, you have to write for them, not for yourself. Those are the advices of Nathan Grippi, our chief editor. And now,
we have
again. Okay, we have questions.
We want to read them first because I think they are related to the first part of the session. So maybe we could go through these.
Why did you choose? Okay, question. Why did you choose the name HaTikvah? And do you plan to grow into covering more international topics? I can answer. We didn't choose the name Atikvah in the sense that this is an heritage, okay? And probably they chose the name Atikvah in order to say something like freedom. This is a newspaper that is addicted to youth. So we have youth readers, and people that write for us are young people. And I think that freedom for a young man and young woman is something that is really, really important. And I think that this, and the newspaper was born in 1949.
Yeah,
1 year before the state of, 1 year after the state of Israel. So, grazie. So I think that those are reasons. Ruben Forti, would you like to expand the podcast to a wider audience doing them in English? But before the last question, to write something more international. We would like to expand in all around the world. We would like to be one of the most important newspapers in all countries in the world, but one step and then one step and then one step. Leat, you say in Hebrew.
Luca, I wanted to add something to Jonathan Brown's answer.
Okay.
So besides living in Washington, D.C., my main occupation is in international affairs. And, if there were room for collaboration to write articles in English and to publish something that is for a European audience rather than an Italian audience only, we would definitely be open to expanding and to even just translate some of the articles we have already. The problem, I think, is that right now we don't have that expansion and that infrastructure just yet, but I think that there's room for collaboration. And, if you want to follow up online, and maybe we can set up a meeting and we can follow up online with you, maybe we can set something up, because that is a really interesting idea and that it's definitely worth pursuing. So thank you for bringing this up.
Something about the name Atikvah. As Luca said before, we didn't choose the name Atikvah, we just received it. But I'm very happy of this name because, as you know, Atikvah in Hebrew means hope. And I think the thing that most define the youth is hope. This is the year of our life that we hope and we dream bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think this is the reason they choose this name. We actually don't know, but we can assume that this is the reason. So let's hope together.
Let's hope together, and let's move to the other question of Ruben Forti. Would you like to expand the podcast to a wider audience doing them in English? Yes, is the same answer that Ludovica told us. And I always add Leat. because we started this year. We had a great answer, and we are very happy about what's happening with the audience and podcast. And we would like to expand, as I said. So, Leat, we will do everything. So, Caterina Gognini, would you be up to sharing the project with other unions? Someone wants
I
to
think
answer?
Luca Spizzichino could give us an insight, and maybe then I'll add something on it, because we were talking about also the possibility of like talking with other unions, because I believe we are the only union in Europe which has its own newspaper. So yeah, Luca, tell us a couple of things more.
Yeah, I can say that this is a project that can expand, also export to other unions, or maybe we can make Atikvah bigger, or in order to write articles or make podcasts, or maybe like on Facebook, in Facebook, making it in English. So for us, as also Luca said, Leat, we want to make Atikvah bigger, but we need also contributors from outside, because if we continue to find contributors in Italy, obviously we will continue to write in Italian. If we will find someone from outside, for example, from Australia or Israel, or for example also in Switzerland, maybe we will change our topics in more international view.
So it's all about our readers and how many contribution we will have. Opinion, I think that this is Zebuloni's cup of tea. Will you cover the Israeli elections, and what are your thoughts on the fourth edition of the Israeli current political situation? Ai bon Dio, direbbero in Spagna. Vai, come on, David.
You're asking me or the other David?
No, David, tu.
Okay, you are the Israeli here.
Yeah, I told you that like my English is not that great, so like you will help me when I won't find the right word. Yes, we will cover the election as we did the last time and the time before, and the time before that. Yes, understood. We also had a live on me and Luca. We had a live on Facebook, and we discussed about the election, the result of the election. What I think about it, I don't know. It's relevant. A personal opinion. I'm not sure. As a journalist, I can say that it's very interesting to see what's happening in Israel these years. There are very crucial and critical years in Israel because of many reasons. I'm not sure the election are the solution for what's happening, but we'll see.
And in my personal opinion, I follow political situation in Italy for work. I'm a journalist too, and I remember when we had problems with our government, and it was something like the craziest thing in earth, covering it. So I don't want to be an Israeli journalist. An Israeli journalist, I think, is dying right now at the moment, because when the government falls is a big deal for journalists that have to stay Knesset and day and night. So happy birthday to them. So let's move to the next one. The next one, it's again our Vice President, David Fiorentini.
I think you heard a shout out from the mother of the Vice President, which is more important. But anyways, so yes, I'm here because also, apart from being Vice President of the Italian Union of Jewish Students, I'm also a humble editor of the HaTikwa newspaper. And my focus mainly is on Israel and Jewish advocacy. So what I'm doing is, through our newspaper, is that during the entire year, we wanted to present Israel through a young perspective, through a young point of view, which will be engaging and the most entertaining as possible. So we continuously gave new clues, new point of reflections about Israel, like on 360 degrees, not only about politics, but also about music, entertainment, and also obviously about current news and events. Also culinary, we had also a few recipes directly from Israel that people enjoyed very much during the quarantine. So, but let's focus 1 second on what we did of extraordinary this year, which was to create a real Israel advocacy column. We did more than 1 article a month, or almost 2 articles a month, in which we covered all the various aspects concerning Israel advocacy. So the work, I planned my work especially on 3 main. So a first one is, let's say, a more basic one for those who don't really know anything about the Middle East situation, never heard about Israel maybe, because obviously our readers aren't only Jews, are also non-Jews who is their first approach to Israel. So mainly is Hasbara, so the effort of disseminate positive information about the action of the State of Israel, and especially also from an historical point of view. And it's important to spread the knowledge of both of specific events, like the War of Independence or the Six-Day War, but also more general topics like the Jewish right to self-determinate and the right of Israel to exist. And then instead there is the second step, which, let's say, it's a more advanced one, because once you learn the basics, once you learn the base that Israel has its own right to exist, the history, let's say, a brief history of what's going on in Israel, you can try to explain to your audience what's going on currently. So the current geopolitical news, the new the actions of the Israeli government, the new deals, new relationships. So, for example, we talked also about, obviously, the Abraham Accords. We did also a wide coverage on the various deals that Israel and together with the American administration managed to broker during this year. And also about relations with the United Nations. We talked about UNRWA in Gaza. So we covered, let's say, this current news about Israel. And the last part is probably the most creative part, the most fun part, because obviously I believe that in order to get people to know Israel, it's not enough to give them a list of international laws that Israel is abiding. So let's say all the rights that Israel has, or that in 1917 there was the Balfour Declaration. It's important to get people also through other engaging stuff that it's more related to their everyday life. So, for example, the technological advances of Israel, the business opportunities that Israel is proposing. Also, I'm a medical student, so also during this year, during the pandemic, was very interesting to see how Israel reacted to the pandemic, how Israeli hospitals worked, and to compare it to Italian ones, because people might not be interested in learning about a foreign country, but if it's concerning their everyday life, this is an incentive on deepening that theme, that topic. And in that sense, also this year, we did a new partnership with Keren Kayemet LeIsrael, Italia, the Italian branch. And together with them, we hope also, especially during the next year, to bring the new advances from Israel, bring them to Italy, show them to our Italian audience, to show the Israeli scientists and the Israeli efforts, for example, right now with the vaccine, and show it to our Italian audience and engage them more and more with Israel. Because by showing them that Israel everyday life is normal, is amazing, is advanced, then everybody will fall in love with the country that we so much love as well. So yes, I'll give the back to you, Luca. And I think I see there are many questions also here in the chat.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. Thank you very much for your speech. Yeah, Israel is a country that deserves to be known obviously. The first question is Victoria Borokhov. I hope that I said it well. Is the paper translated into English or it's just available in Italian? Is it just available in Italian? But we are working on it because a lot of people show their interest in knowing what we are doing during this panel. So I think that next year will be a lot of space for connections between nations. It would be great because one of most important thing of those events is the cooperation between Jews from all around the world. So I think that would be something that is really great. Caterina Gognini from Verona, mi pare. Which do you think is, sì, vedo che annuisco. Which do you think is the most successful part of your project? Guys?
I think
everyone would say in their own.
Everyone, everyone. It's part, yeah.
The interviews are the most successful ones. For example, the interview with Sami Modiano, that is the most viewed in history, and Luca will say to us how many views we reached. And also, I think also the video interviews and the Facebook Lives, they are the most viewed ones.
Sorry, it's like you're asking me if
Zebu?
It's like you're asking me if I love more my father or my mother. Like,
yeah, I think so.
I think like the podcast and, as Lucas says, the interviews are the most successful part of our work. We are very proud of it.
And I think that the most successful part of our project is the project, because we structured the project in order to be something that is competitive, something that is professional. So yeah, it's something, as David said, so father and mother, it's impossible to decide. Joshua Bonfante from Savona, the only one. Which project to date has the most views and how many does it have in numbers? Zebu, Luca?
So this is the most viewed interview made by, obviously, our phenomenal David Zebuloni, that reached 77,000 views.
Okay, I would like to say that this number is, and I will tell it in the speech, but I don't care because we are talking about it now. It's 2 times the Italian Jewish population.
Yeah.
2 times. It's really incredible, and I really can't believe it, but it's all about David's greatness, and it's all about him.
All about Sami's greatness. Sami is one of the last Holocaust survivors in Italy. I met him in his home in Ostia, close to Rome. Wow, it was very special. I cried a lot, I have to say, very unprofessional. It was very meaningful because I felt that like we are as a team doing something that has like a historical value. To conserve his story was something very meaningful for us.
Okay. Gila Laskar, in all those years, have you ever had the opportunity to talk to other important journalists, both in Italy and Israel? Yes. This is about what we've done in the first times of our editorial board, in the first days, because we decided to start with good articles, and we wanted to impress our readers, and we interviewed Maurizio Molinari, that is one of the most important editors in our country, but also Francesco Costa. We have a great list of people that we interviewed, because I think that the example is one of the most important thing, and having a talk with someone that we admire is really, really important. You have something to add, guys?
Yeah, for example, that Maurizio Molinari is the director of the second newspaper in Italy, so one of the biggest newspapers in Italy. And Francesco Costa is the young journalist that from 10,000 followers on Instagram, now is like in 120,000 followers. So this year he has an increase on his followers and is now one of the most important journalists about the US elections and the US in general.
Okay, let's move to the next speech. That is mine. Okay.
I to interrupt for a second to thank Jason Isaacson from AJC for joining. Hi, you may not remember me. I used to work with the JCRC of Greater Washington, and I really admire your work. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thanks.
You can move forward.
Okay, now we'll do the next speech, and then again, feel free to type in questions in the chat box. We would love to hear from you. So this speech, and then last answer to the question, and then we will end this panel. So I have the last speech. In order to talk about our experience, in order to close this panel, I want to start from the beginning. I'll tell the truth. When I received the proposal to be Atikvah's chief editor, I was doubtful. I was doubtful because the newspaper was in an uncomfortable position. Our name, Atikvah, a newspaper open to the free comparison of ideas, put us in the middle of a continuous ideological confrontation where everybody was more focused on validating their position than understanding the importance of a newspaper of young Jews. So every year was basically a fight. There were many articles, sometimes wrote by editorial board, sometimes by readers, that attacked the other's way of seeing. I accepted this challenge because the proposal came from people that I respect. There are David Zebuloni, our director, and Luca Spizzichino, our chief editor. I knew that with them, with our other chief editor, Nathan Greppi, and with the team that we built together, we could do great things. We have based our work on quality, because quality doesn't know political opinions. We wanted to change Atikvah's consideration. We did it through articles, videos, photos, live conferences. We told the young Jews' vision of the world in the most modern way possible: religion, culture, Italian and foreign policy, and much more. Our work is in the public eye. As volunteers, we created the first podcast in the Italian Jewish history. Zebuloni wrote for us the most read article in the Italian Jewish history. The interview to the Shoah survivor Sami Modiano, as we said before, with more than 75,000 views, 2 times the Jewish population in Italy. We did interviews with some of the most important newspapers editors in our country, like Maurizio Molinari and Francesco Costa, Repubblica and Il Post. We have begun to strengthen the relationship with other ethnic religious minorities, with interview of our president Simone Santoro with Gennaro Spinelli, president of the Union of Romani Communities in Italy. This is just a small representation of what we've done during this long and difficult year, I repeat, as volunteers. Regarding the relationship with our difficult reading audience, we fear that our name, Atikvah, open to the free comparison of ideas, gave the possibility to everyone to ruin our work with articles that could divide rather than unite. And most important thing, under everybody's eye, Jewish and not Jewish. Jews and not Jews. So we decided to respect our name, yes, but at the same time to divide clearly between articles by readers and articles by editorial board. This worked. Our problem stopped, even because the work that we did during the year is appreciated by everyone, and no one wants to ruin our work with the sterile controversies. We received with pleasure compliments by people that was at first critical with us. Despite the good results, there is so much work to do. We want to develop, to create other contents, to experiment new ways to do journalism. We want to become a reference point for the Italian Judaism, to extend the number of people that write for us, to be known by Jews from all around the world. So, Jonathan, this is the answer to your question again. One day the pandemic situation will end and we can think about physical events. We were so close to the big project for the Union of Italian Jewish Communities election, for example. Job is not over and we can't wait to start a new year. The objective is talking next year, thinking about what we did in 2020 with the awareness that it was nothing compare on what we did in 2021. Thank you very much, and again, feel free to type in question in the chat box.
I think we have another question here from Joshua, who's asking, how much time does your journal take from your day-to-day hobbies, jobs, and studies?
2 words.
I asked this question to you, to both Lucas and David, who really put a lot of effort and a lot of love in it, because I think the love for the cause, the love for the journal is really the drive, what makes you work so hard for it. So tell us.
A lot. A lot.
And we define it like a volunteer, because actually it's a volunteer, but like sometimes my parents ask me, like, it's not a full-time job. So it is, but we do it as volunteers with a lot of love to this newspaper and to the people who read it.
Thank you very much for all of you that follow us during this panel. And I give you 10-15 seconds to do other questions, and then we will stop. We have some time. Jonathan Brown, the president.
I'm just here to Robin had an issue with another session he has to handle, so I will be closing after you're all done. On behalf of Fujas, I want to just thank you everyone for doing this panel. It was amazing, very interesting, and I hope other unions will get ideas from your work. It's absolutely outstanding. And even if there is no award, really be proud of the work you do. It's really, really incredible. Thank you very, very much again for doing this session with us. And like my predecessor, or not my predecessor, my former president in UGEI, Alina Brickman, would say, I hope we will write the next chapter all together. So thank you, everyone.
We will. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope it's so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.